Hello, I am Andres Estoman, and in this work I want to show why Venezuela is unique from an architectural perspective, analyzing the following 7 points: acoustics, circulation, color, light, rhythm, scale, and texture. Venezuela has some defining characteristics, and those can help to define how the practice of architecture in this country is. Its climate is an example. Now we're going to see how, with all those 7 points, we can determine the Venezuelan architecture. The Aula Magna of the Central University of Venezuela is an example of great acoustics in our architecture, with the floating clouds designed by Alexander Calder and the consideration in acoustics. The Aula Magna is one of the most impressive theaters in Latin America and probably the world. In the House of Bolivar, we can see how houses used to be in our country, with only a story and a central courtyard. This courtyard helped to the distribution and circulation through the house. Horizontal circulation is extremely important in this period of our architecture, the colonial and 19th century architecture. But with the oil-based economy, Venezuelan cities started its vertical growth. The Parque Central Towers shows us how skyscrapers started being important in the city's conception. With its height, the vertical circulation becomes of even more importance than the horizontal, a trend that started appearing in the high-rise buildings in Venezuela. Venezuela is a tropical country, more specifically a Caribbean country, so the use of the color in the Venezuelan architecture is very extensive, using bright, shocking colors in the popular architecture and the colonial parts of the cities. If we take a look to the Coro Historical Center, it's obvious the use of bright colors, comparable to the colors used in the Antilles as an example. That use of color in the colonial parts of the town can be very influential in all the architecture of our country. The Parque Cristal building shows how light is an important factor in the development of our architecture. The Venezuelan tropical climate is very influential in this area. With a whole facade of glass, it allows light inside of a building. Glass will become an important material in the Venezuelan practice of the architecture. The 23 Venera complexes, designed by Carlos Raúl Villanueva, is a clear example of massive reproduction of the same superblocks and how the reproduction and emplacement can create a rhythm between them. These buildings were developed as the solution to the habitat problem in our country. That's why the reproduction and the scale of this project. In colonial times, the architecture used to have a small scale. Houses with only one story used to be constructed. This is an example of the development of our country in those times. Then, with oil and economic power, the constructions started having a bigger scale, becoming massive. The Parque Central complex is an example of how great constructions can be with this development. And it is not the only massive scale construction. In our architecture, the texture can be seen in the building's facade. And in the picture we can see how glass is an important material in Venezuelan architecture. Also, we can see the use of brick and metal in the facade in order to create a difference in those facades, and also to create a shadow in the building's interior. Once again, being the climate important to the development of our architecture. Because of its warmth, its climate, and its people, we can see how light can define texture, seeing the extensive use of glass in the building facades. Also, we can see how those concepts evolved with society, how suddenly the Venezuelan cities started being every time higher and higher, how rhythm defined an era of our Venezuelan architecture, and how our tropical influences are undeniable after seeing the Coro Historical Center. We all learn a lot after seeing this work, how the architecture is influenced by society, and this link cannot be ignored, unless an architect wants a shared life to its work. Venezuelan architecture is important in that area, seeing the parallel development of both society and architecture.